Her billionaire husband let his mother put his mistress in charge of Christmas. She changed the venue. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The house had been lit for Christmas before Raina Calhoun woke, though she had not switched on a single lamp. Timers clicked through the rooms at 6, casting warm squares across the marble foyer and the unbroken line of evergreen along the stair rail. For 12 years, Raina had made the Calhoun Family Foundation dinner feel less like a display of wealth and more like an invitation. She chose local florists, called donors by their first names, and asked every year which small organization could use the gifts that arrived beneath the ballroom tree. This morning, the dining table held only her coffee, a bowl of clementines, and an email Evan had forwarded at 1:13 a.m. The subject line identified an updated event schedule. She opened the attachment again, although the words had not changed during the night. Welcome remarks, Sloan Barrett. Foundation partners, Sloan Barrett. Gift direction consultation, Sloan Barrett. Raina's former responsibilities had not been crossed out. Her name had simply been removed, cleanly and completely, as if someone had lifted it from a printed page with a careful hand. She heard Evan's car roll into the drive just after 7. He came in, with his phone at his ear, coat open, the cold still clinging to his shoulders. He finished the call in the hallway, looking past her toward the kitchen, as though he were already late for the next thing. Morning, he said. You saw the update? Raina rested one hand on the edge of the table. I saw Sloan's name beside every job I have done for the dinner since we started the foundation. Evan exhaled, with the patient sound he used when a conversation seemed likely to inconvenience him. My mother needed someone to coordinate. Sloan is good at logistics. It is not personal. Did you tell them I was finished with this work? His eyes flicked to the attachment on the table, and then to the windows, where the grounds crew was carrying wreaths toward the gate. No one said you were finished. You have had a difficult few months. Vivian thought you might appreciate a lighter load. That is not what I asked. Evan set his keys down too carefully. Raina, please do not turn a holiday dinner into a crisis. The family needs a calm Christmas. For a moment, she watched his face arrange itself into concern. It was the expression that had rescued him from many conversations. A reasonable husband asking for proportion, a busy man asking for grace. He did not apologize. He did not say he had misunderstood. He spoke as if calm were a gift he could offer her, after he had already made the decision. Raina looked back at the run of show. Sloan's name was positioned precisely where hers had been, not merely assisting, but welcoming the foundation partners and deciding which community programs receive the evening's pledges. When did you ask her? Evan's jaw tightened. Why does that matter? Because it tells me whether you forgot to include me or chose not to. The clock above the stove ticked between them. Evan poured himself coffee and added sugar without looking at her. Sloan was available. Vivian trusts her. We needed the schedule settled before invitations went out. There it was. Not carelessness. Not his mother's momentum carrying him along. He had needed it settled, and her agreement had been an obstacle he solved by leaving it out. Raina felt the first sharp sting move through her, followed by something steadier. She had spent years repairing the small tears in Evan's public life before anyone could see them. She had smoothed his missed calls, translated his silences, and made the generosity of the foundation look like a shared instinct. He expected her to do it again now, to stand beneath the Christmas lights and lend her composure to a story in which she had willingly stepped aside. Nothing important has changed, he said, hearing her silence and mistaking it for retreat. Raina folded the printed schedule once and slipped it into her folder. Something important has, she said. I just needed to know whether you knew it. Evan stared at her, unsettled not by what she had said, but by the fact that she had stopped explaining it for him. Then his phone vibrated, and he turned toward it. Raina watched him go to answer, his voice softening. before he reached the hall. She stood alone in the bright kitchen, holding the fact he had given her. He had spent her credibility, as if it belonged to him, and he had done it expecting her silence to make the purchase legitimate. Maribel Knox did not keep a decorative office. Her desk held a legal pad, 2 sharpened pencils, and a framed black and white photograph of a rowboat on a lake. The foundation offices were quiet that afternoon, most of the staff working remotely, before Christmas, and Raina was grateful for the absence of bright voices asking whether she was excited for the dinner. Maribel read the revised run of show without interrupting. She wore a charcoal suit and half-rimmed glasses, and when she reached Sloane's name, she did not lift an eyebrow or offer the kind of sympathy that would turn Raina into a case. "What do you want to know?" Maribel asked at last. Raina had practiced an answer in the elevator. It vanished when she sat across from the woman who had helped build the foundation's governance rules. "Whether I have any right to stop this, without looking like I am trying to punish people." Maribel slid the document aside and opened a blue grant file. "The dinner is funded through the Leland Donor Restricted Grant. You negotiated that grant, and the original venue agreement identifies you as event steward." She turned the agreement so Raina could read the clause she had signed 3 months earlier. Before deposits are released, the steward may change the location if the revised site remains consistent with the grant purpose and vendor commitments can be honored. That is authority. What you do with it is a separate question. Raina read the familiar words slowly. The original dinner was scheduled at the Calhoun house, an impressive place for photographs and a convenient place for Vivian to preside. But the grant funded a community arts program, and each year Raina had felt the strange gap between the foundation's polished rooms and the neighborhood work it claimed to support. "If I move it, Evan will say I am reacting to Sloane." "He may say that," Maribel replied. "It will not decide whether it is true." She opened a second folder. Inside was a brief from Lakeside Conservatory, a public greenhouse, an event hall bordering the Lake District. Raina had visited it in autumn, considering it for a spring reception. Its glass walls looked out on a courtyard used for community programs. The gallery space beside it was where the grant's supported exhibit would eventually be installed. "They had a cancellation," Maribel said. "I asked no one to hold it for you. I did ask whether a provisional hold was possible." Raina looked up. "You anticipated this?" "I anticipated that an event with donor obligations might need a neutral location. I did not anticipate your husband's choices." There was no softness in the sentence, but there was room in it. Raina leaned back and let the possibility settle. She could change the venue. She could not make Evan understand why she had to. That distinction felt new and inconvenient, like discovering a door in a house she had believed had only walls. "Would it make me petty?" she asked. Maribel considered her, not the way a lawyer measured risk, but the way one adult considered another's agency. "It depends what you move it toward." Raina pictured the house in its early morning glow, the schedule with her name missing, Evan asking her to keep things calm. She pictured the conservatory, where the event could belong to the purpose donors believed they were supporting rather than to a family fiction. "Toward a room where no one has to pretend I agreed to disappear," she said. Maribel nodded once. "That is a reason." "It is not an excuse." The phrase made Raina smile despite herself. Maribel called the conservatory while Raina listened. The hold would last until noon the next day. No deposit would move until Raina authorized it. No vendor would be notified without a documented decision. When the call ended, Maribel placed the confirmation email in front of her, but did not touch the keyboard. "I can protect the paperwork," she said. "I cannot make the choice for you." Raina left the office carrying no cancellation notice, no declaration, no dramatic plan. Only the provisional hold and a copy of the agreement in her bag. Outside, the city was rinsed silver by a thin December rain. She paused beneath the awning and watched people cross the sidewalk, with umbrellas angled against the wind. For years, she had treated her ability to prevent discomfort as a duty. Now a practical option waited for her signature, and its existence did not ask Evan's permission. She was not ready to use it. But she was no longer trying to persuade him that the wound existed. She was deciding what responsibility was hers and what story she would no longer carry. The cafe near the Calhoun house had narrow windows fogged by the noon rush, and a chalkboard sign offering cinnamon coffee. Raina chose a table at the back, where she could see the door, without feeling as though she had arranged an interrogation. Sloane Barrett arrived 10 minutes early in a camel coat, carrying no purse large enough to suggest she planned to settle in. At 51, she had the composed bearing of someone accustomed to being listened to in meetings. But when she saw Raina, that composure faltered. "Thank you for meeting me," Sloane said. Raina gestured to the chair opposite. "I thought it would be better to speak, without anyone interpreting for us." The server brought water. Raina waited until she had left, before placing the run of show between them. Sloane did not pick it up. Her eyes moved over her own name, repeated down the page. "Evan said you wanted distance from the dinner," she said. "He said Vivian had asked him to find someone temporary, while you took time." Raina kept her hands around her cup. "Did he say I had agreed?" Sloane swallowed. "He made it sound settled." "That is different." "Yes." The word came quietly, and Sloane did not try to decorate it. A car hissed through a wet street outside. Raina had imagined this meeting in harsher versions during the night. Accusations, evidence placed like weapons, Sloane's face reduced to a single roll in the injury Evan had made. None of those versions felt clean once Sloane was sitting across from her, visibly uncomfortable and still fully responsible for her own choices. "There is something else," Sloane said. She looked at the table instead of at Raina. "My involvement with Evan has made this impossible to treat as ordinary work. I should have said no until I spoke to you. I did not." The admission landed, with weight but without spectacle. Raina felt anger rise, precise and hot, then held it where it belonged. "I am not asking you to defend yourself to me." Sloane lifted her gaze. Raina continued before either of them could make the moment about forgiveness. "I am asking whether you will stand in a room built on a false sentence." Sloane's fingers touched the edge of the schedule. "No," she said. "Not if the sentence is that you stepped aside." She took out her phone, unlocked it, and set it face up on the table. The messages were there. Evan asking whether she could take the lead before he had spoken to Raina, telling Sloane that Raina was too close to the foundation work to see what was best, saying his mother would be relieved if Sloane could make the evening smooth. There was nothing theatrical in the exchange. That made it worse. He had written around Raina, as if she were an administrative complication. Sloane forwarded the thread to Raina, then placed the phone back in her own hand. "I will confirm what he told me," she said. "And I will not accept the host role." Raina watched the email arrive in her inbox. A small record. A fact with a date and a time. "There is one thing I need to say," Sloane added. "Please do not use my private life as a weapon. I know I have made choices I have to live with, but I do not want this turned into a performance where I am punished so he can call himself honest afterward." Raina could hear the request beneath the defensiveness. Sloane was asking not to become a prop in a conflict she had helped complicate. "I will not do that," Raina said. "I am not interested in making you carry the part he wrote." Sloane nodded, and some of the tension in her shoulders loosened. "What will you do?" she asked. Raina looked through the window toward the original venue, its gates visible across the corner lot. She could almost see the ballroom lights reflected in the glass, the donors arriving, the easy story Evan expected her to inhabit. "I do not know yet," she said, "but I will not lend my name to something I did not choose." When they stood, Sloane offered no apology grand enough to resolve the meeting. Raina did not offer absolution. They left separately, each carrying a different obligation. By the time Raina reached her car, the forwarded messages were still open on her phone. She did not feel victorious. She felt less alone inside the truth. Sloane had chosen cooperation, not redemption, and Raina had chosen to stop competing for Evan's version of events. Darius Wynn asked for 30 minutes and closed the operations conference room door behind Raina, with both hands full of folders. He was 38, exacting without being stiff, and he had been with the foundation long enough to know that the difference between a kind instruction and a damaging one was often found in the paperwork. On the wall monitor, a vendor's schedule glowed in columns of red and green. Raina noticed the invitation printer marked yellow, the caterer marked yellow, the original venue marked yellow. Nothing had been released. I thought you and Evan had settled the host question, Darius said. He did not accuse her. The uncertainty in his voice made clear that he had been trying to avoid a private family dispute becoming a professional mess. Raina set a small notebook on the table, but left it closed. We have not, she said, and I will not ask you to take a side you cannot explain on the record. Darius sat across from her. The tension in his posture eased by a fraction. What do you need? Facts. Then, if a venue decision is made, accurate communication to the people who need it. He turned the monitor toward her and opened the email chain. Evan had directed him to identify Sloan as host on the invitations. Darius had replied twice asking whether the grant materials should be revised, since Raina's name appeared on the signed program brief. Evan's answer was brief. Leave the grant language alone. Sloan is handling the room. That was all. No reference to Raina's consent. No explanation of why the person associated with the donor relationship had disappeared from the program. I paused the final print run, Darius said. The instructions conflicted with the brief. I did not want to create a problem, but I also did not want to send something that donors could reasonably question. Raina read the exchange once, then again. Evan's confidence was visible in the casualness of it. He had assumed every system around him would absorb the inconsistency, because people had always helped him make things look coherent. You did the right thing, she said. Darius looked relieved, though he tried not to show it. I was worried I was overstepping. You protected the foundation from a document that could not answer for itself. She looked at the yellow marks on the schedule. If the dinner moves, can vendors be notified without inventing a reason? Yes. We can say the event is relocating to align with the grant program, and that revised directions will follow. That is true. The conservatory has loading access, and the caterer can make the adjustment if we confirm today. He hesitated. But Evan personally called 3 of the larger partners. They may ask him what changed. Raina pictured Evan standing in a room full of people who had trusted her work, giving them the version most convenient to him. She did not want Darius enlisted to correct a marriage. Then he can answer for the calls he made, she said. I only need you to document the instructions you received and tell the truth when the logistics change. Darius nodded, then made a note in the margin of his printout. That I can do. He copied the relevant emails into the Foundation's secure project file, dated the vendor hold, and printed a single-page status report. The ordinary motions were almost calming. Paper sliding from a printer, a folder closing, a line item changing from yellow to pending. Raina understood, with a clarity that surprised her, that this was not a courtroom, and Darius was not a witness she had recruited to shame Evan. He was the adult responsible for an event whose moving pieces had been put at risk by a decision nobody had documented honestly. When she left, Darius walked her to the corridor. For what it is worth, he said, stopping short of the elevators, the donors associate this work with you. They ask about the community programs because you made them understand where the money goes. Raina did not know what to do with the kindness, so she simply said, "Thank you for telling me." In the elevator, she opened Maribel's email with the Lakeside Conservatory hold. Then she opened Darius's status report. The facts were no longer private discomfort she could be asked to smooth away. They had consequences, vendors waiting, donors expecting clarity, a signed program brief that did not match Evan's instructions. For the first time, his assumption had a cost beyond her feelings. And she had a way to respond, without asking anyone to choose between loyalty and truth. At 11:48 the next morning, Raina sat at the Foundation office conference table, with Maribel's venue amendment on one side of her laptop and Darius's operational confirmation on the other. Beyond the glass wall, staff moved quietly through the holiday-thinned floor. She could still stop. The Calhoun house remained reserved. Vivian could go on arranging flowers. Evan could go on telling himself that a few changed names did not amount to a decision about her life. Raina's hand hovered over the confirmation field for the Lakeside Conservatory. She was not certain of anything except what she could no longer do. Maribel stood at the end of the table, neither urging nor reassuring. The venue meets the grant conditions, she said. The vendors can accommodate the change. The record will show the basis for the amendment. Raina clicked confirm. The screen refreshed, with a new location, a new delivery window, and a line stating that the event steward had authorized the revision. Her pulse did not settle. It simply became something she had to carry. Darius sent the vendor notices, while Maribel filed the amendment. Then Raina began a message addressed to Evan, Sloan, and Darius. She wrote it twice, before finding words that did not apologize for existing. The Calhoun Family Foundation Christmas dinner will be held at Lakeside Conservatory. The donor purpose and scheduled community commitments remain intact. No role will be represented, as agreed unless the person named has agreed to it. Please confirm, in writing, what you will truthfully do next. She read the message aloud once in her head. It was measured. It did not name Sloane's private life. It did not ask anyone to condemn Evan. It did not soften the fact that consent was a condition, not a courtesy. She pressed send. Evan called before the screen could dim. Raina let it ring once, then answered. You changed the venue behind my back. His voice was low and furious, the kind of controlled anger that used to make her spend the rest of the day searching for ways to reduce it. She looked through the conference room glass at the city beyond the windows. You changed the host behind mine, she said. I changed the place, where that lie was supposed to become public. There was a silence on the line, followed by a short laugh without humor. Lie is a dramatic word for a scheduling issue. Then say, in writing, that I approved it. Evan began to speak, stopped, and began again. My mother was trying to make things easier. For whom? For the family. I am part of the family, Evan. He sighed, impatient now. You know what I mean. Raina closed her eyes for one breath. She did know. He meant the version of the family in which his mother could appoint someone else to her work, in which Sloane could accept a place prepared by a false explanation, and in which Raina's steadiness made every displacement acceptable. No, she said. I know what you have asked me to mean for years. His voice sharpened. Are you going to embarrass me in front of donors? I am moving an event to the place that best serves the grant. You can decide how you want to respond to the truth about why the earlier plan could not stand. He said her name as a warning. She did not fill the quiet after it. Finally, he said, we will talk tonight, and ended the call. Raina set down the phone. Her hands were shaking, but the message remained sent. A moment later, Sloane's reply arrived. I will step back from the host role. I will attend only, if that is appropriate, and I will not represent any arrangement as your agreement. Darius followed with a practical confirmation. Vendors notified. Revised directions pending. No conflicting host title will be printed. Maribel added the amended agreement to the record and looked at Raina across the table. The decision is documented, she said. Raina nodded. The words did not make her feel triumphant. They made the next consequences real. Evan could no longer call the change a small logistics issue, without answering the question he had avoided. Sloane had made her own honest choice. Darius had protected the work, without becoming a weapon in a marriage. And Raina, who had waited so long to feel entirely ready, before acting, understood that readiness might never arrive as comfort. She had set the terms anyway. The dinner would take place in a room, where her name, the grant's purpose, and the facts would no longer be arranged without her. Evan chose the library for their meeting because it had always been the room where difficult family conversations became private before they became real. The tree in the corner was already dressed in silver ornaments. Vivian Calhoun's staff had laid a fire in the grate, though neither Raina nor Evan had asked for one. Raina arrived 5 minutes early and stood by the window until Evan came in. He had taken off his jacket, loosened his tie, and adopted the exhausted expression of a man asking to be rescued from a problem he had not created. The revised invitations have not gone out yet, he said. We can fix this. Raina turned from the glass. The venue amendment is filed. That does not make it permanent. He moved toward the desk, then stopped when he saw she would not sit. I will restore your title. Sloane will not be on the program. I will speak to my mother and tell her the plans changed. We can keep the dinner here and spare everyone an explanation. The offer was arranged with the same confidence as the original removal. Give her back the appearance of what she had owned and call that repair. Raina watched him carefully. Will you tell the foundation partners you gave Darius instructions without my agreement? Evan looked away. Why would we do that? There is no need to make a private disagreement public. Because the instructions affected their event. The event is still happening. That is not the same thing. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. Raina, a public correction will embarrass the family. The sentence might once have sent her searching for some gentler way to speak. Instead, she heard its shape. He was not describing harm. He was describing the cost of being known accurately. The embarrassment is not that people learn I have a boundary, she said. It is that you thought I did not. Evan's hand dropped. For the first time, since he entered, he looked less angry than unsure. Is this about ending our marriage? The question hung in the room, with the scent of pine and smoke. Raina had imagined saying yes at moments, when she was too hurt to distinguish an ending from a warning. She would not borrow certainty now simply, because he wanted an answer she could react to. It is about ending an arrangement, she said, where you decide, and I make it look kind. His face tightened. That is unfair. It is painful. That does not make it unfair. Evan walked to the hearth and stood with his back to her. I made a mistake. I am offering to correct it. You are offering to rearrange the surface. You have not said you acted without my consent. You have not said why you believed you could replace me and asked me to be grateful for less work. He did not answer. Outside, a branch scraped softly against the window pane. Raina felt the old reflex rise, soften the silence, help him find words, make a path back to the version of them that could be shown to friends. She let the reflex pass without following it. I cannot promise you what happens to us, she continued, but I can tell you what stops now. Evan turned. And if I refuse? Then you refuse. The dinner still belongs at the conservatory. The grant still has obligations. I still have the right to decide what carries my name. His expression hardened again, perhaps because there was no argument left that could make her smaller. I may not attend, he said. Raina nodded, although the words struck deeper than she wanted him to see. That is your choice. He picked up his jacket from the chair. At the door, he looked back, as if he expected her to call him back, or revise the terms into something easier to accept. She did neither. When he left, the library felt suddenly too large. Raina sat at last in the chair he had not used and listened to the quiet house settle around her. She grieved more than the prospect that he might skip the dinner. She grieved the years she had spent mistaking the maintenance of a beautiful image for the care of a marriage. The cost of refusing him was not a clean victory. It was an empty room, a holiday altered beyond recognition, and the knowledge that peace purchased by erasing herself had never been peace at all. Morning light turned the glass roof of Lakeside Conservatory pale gold, and the first delivery truck had not yet reached the loading entrance when Raina arrived. The room was quieter than she remembered from her visit with Maribel. Rows of chairs faced the small presentation area. Winter ferns stood green beneath the high panes, and in the adjoining gallery the community exhibit waited behind covered panels. This was not the house ballroom. It did not flatter anyone. It made space for the work the grant was meant to support. Darius had placed a round table near the service corridor with 5 chairs and a stack of revised programs. Maribel Knox sat, with her amendment file closed in front of her. Sloane Barrett stood near the window, wearing a dark blue coat and holding a paper cup with both hands. Evan came last. He paused at the doorway when he saw that Raina had taken the chair nearest the program copies, not the chair at the head of the table. Thank you for coming, Raina said. This is a planning meeting. We need to be clear about how everyone will appear, speak, or step back without repeating a false account. Maribel outlined the venue amendment in practical terms. The donor restrictions remained satisfied. The new location had been properly authorized, and the foundation's obligations had not changed. Darius confirmed that vendors had adjusted and that the revised program accurately listed the working team. No one spoke for several seconds after he finished. Sloane set down her cup. I can leave before guests arrive, if that makes this easier. Raina looked at her. It would have been simple to accept the offer. It might even have looked generous. But Sloane's absence could become another performance arranged around Evan's choices. "You do not owe me disappearance," Raina said. "You owe your own honest choice." Sloane nodded, tears bright but held back. "Then I will attend as a guest. I will not take your former role, and I will not speak for the Foundation." "Thank you," Raina said. She turned to Evan. He sat with his hands clasped, his attention fixed on a spot in the center of the table. "You may attend as yourself. You may not ask anyone here to call my silence agreement." His eyes rose to hers. "Can we not discuss our marriage in front of staff?" The request had a reasonable sound, but it was also another attempt to move the meeting into the territory where he could decide what counted. Raina kept her voice even. "We are not discussing our marriage. We are deciding how this event will proceed truthfully." Evan shifted in his chair. "I do not see why every donor needs a statement." Darius spoke before Raina could answer, not sternly, simply doing the job she had asked him to do. "The donors need an accurate program, Mr. Calhoun. Some of them received your initial host notice. They will ask about the change." The distinction landed in the room. This was not a tribunal. It was an operations problem created by a recorded instruction. Evan looked at the revised program, then at Sloane. "What exactly do you expect me to say?" Raina answered, "Only what is true. The earlier arrangement did not have my agreement. The event moved to protect its purpose. You do not have to explain more than that." Evan gave a small, disbelieving shake of his head. "And you think that will be enough?" "For tonight, it has to be." Maribel slid a prepared correction across the table, addressed to the partners Evan had contacted. It did not accuse. It stated that the host designation had been revised, that Raina remained the event steward, and that the dinner's community commitment was unchanged. Evan read it twice. His thumb pressed the edge of the paper until it bent. Then he took out his phone. "I will send it," he said. Darius exhaled almost silently. Sloane's shoulders dropped. Raina felt no surge of triumph, only the unfamiliar steadiness of seeing a condition become shared reality. Evan was not being humiliated. He was being asked to own a choice he had made. When he tapped send, the sound was barely audible, but it changed the shape of the morning. The program went to print. Sloane moved her chair away from the host materials. Evan remained in the room, no longer directing it. And Raina watched the conservatory begin to fill with the ordinary work of an evening she had refused to surrender. By dusk, the conservatory had become a warm lantern beside the lake. Foundation partners stepped out of dark cars into a light rain, their umbrellas shining beneath the entry lamps. Raina stood just inside the doors, with Darius, welcoming them as they arrived. The exhibit panels in the gallery had been uncovered. Photographs and sketches from the neighborhood arts program lined the walls, and a small brass sign explained what the grant would fund after Christmas. People paused to read it before moving toward the reception tables. Raina found that she could breathe more easily here than she had in the Calhoun house. No portrait of the family watched from the walls. No arrangement of silver and flowers asked her to pretend that wealth itself was a purpose. The revised program was simple. Raina Calhoun, event steward; Darius Wynn, operations director; the foundation team listed in the acknowledgments. No invented title besides Sloane's name. Before the first toast, Raina spoke briefly beside the exhibit. She thanked the partners for honoring the grant's purpose and said the evening had moved, so the work it supported could be seen in the place where it would continue. Evan stood several steps behind her, listening. When he came to her side, she could feel the old instinct to step in, make every change sound effortless, and offer an explanation graceful enough to protect everyone. Instead, she left space for him. The earlier arrangement did not have Raina's agreement, Evan said. The words were awkward in his mouth, but he did not retreat from them. Raina added, "We moved the dinner to honor the grant's purpose and the people responsible for it." The room settled around the answer, without demanding confession or explanation. The correction was made. It was not a spectacle. Sloane arrived a little later, with the attendees not separated from them, and not placed at the center of anything. She wore a black dress beneath a wool coat, and gave Raina a small nod from across the room. Raina returned it. There was no intimacy in the gesture, no fresh claim of understanding. Only a mutual recognition that both women were keeping the choices they had made. Later, while Darius guided attendees toward dinner, Evan approached Raina beside the refreshment table. "Is that all you plan to say about it?" he asked. His voice was controlled, but the question carried the impatience of someone accustomed to a private matter being resolved by one carefully managed statement. Raina looked across the room. Sloane was studying the exhibit, her hands folded before her. Darius was checking the timing with the caterer. The evening had found its own rhythm, because people had been allowed to do the work they actually held. "For tonight," Raina said, "it is the truth we owe this room." Evan looked, as though he might argue, then glanced toward the gathering and stopped. A few minutes later, Sloane came to Raina's side, careful not to interrupt. "The program is running smoothly," she said. "Darius thought you would want to know." "Thank you for keeping the role you chose," Raina replied. Sloane nodded and went back to the reception. Raina watched her leave, without wanting to punish her or draw her closer. The distance was honest. So was the recognition she felt when the dinner began and the room stood quietly for the presentation about the community space. Her name had not been used to bless someone else's decision. Her work had not been converted into an absence. Under the glass roof, with rain ticking softly overhead, Raina experienced the plain relief of occupying space, without performing forgiveness or revenge. When the last guests had gone, and the conservatory lights dimmed over the empty tables, Evan found Raina near the loading entrance. Her coat was over one arm, and Darius was speaking with the caterer a few yards away. "Can I ride home with you?" Evan asked. The question was tentative enough that, for a second, it reminded her of the man she had married, before every difficult thing had been handled by a calendar and an assistant. Raina did not let the memory make the decision. "Not tonight," she said. "I need to go home alone." He nodded once, his disappointment visible, but not weaponized. "Can we talk tomorrow?" "Yes. Maribel will be nearby." His eyes flickered with irritation. "Do we need counsel for a conversation?" "I need someone in the building who can help keep the practical terms practical." Evan looked, as though he wanted to protest, then remembered the morning meeting and did not. "All right," he said. The next day, Maribel arranged for them to use a small sitting room beside her office. She remained at a desk in the adjoining suite, with the door open, close enough to be available, and far enough away that Raina and Evan had to speak for themselves. Evan arrived carrying no flowers, no gift, no elaborate gesture. He sat across from Raina and placed a printed copy of the correction email on the table. "I sent it to everyone I contacted," he said. Darius confirmed the list. Raina glanced at the page. "Thank you." Evan looked down at his hands. "I treated your steadiness as permission. I see that now." The admission was not large, but it had shape. It named something real. Raina felt the part of her that wanted to accept it immediately, to turn one sentence into a bridge back to familiar ground. She did not reject the sentence. She simply did not make it do more work than it could. What would repairing this marriage require? Evan asked. His voice was rougher than she had heard it in public. "I do not know all of that yet," Raina said. "I know what I need now." She opened the notebook she had brought. The list was short because she had refused to write a case against him. First, decisions about the foundation are separate until trust is assessed. You do not communicate about my commitments through your mother, Sloane, Darius, or anyone else. You speak to me, or you do not speak for me. Evan nodded slowly. Second, there is no claim of reconciliation before a mediated conversation. Not to the family, not to donors, not to friends who want to ask whether Christmas smoothed everything over. He winced at that, but she continued. Third, we agree to a mediator who is not chosen by either of us alone. Then I decide whether I want to continue the conversation. Evan lifted his eyes. Those are conditions. Yes. They sound like punishment. Raina closed the notebook, but kept her hand on it. No, they are the conditions under which I can hear you without disappearing. He looked toward Maribel's open doorway, then back at Raina. You do not owe me an answer about us. No. He inhaled, held the breath, and let it go. She could almost see the old habit moving through him. Find the smaller version of her boundary, call it compromise, and ask her to accept relief in place of repair. This time, he did not follow it. I will agree to the foundation separation, he said. And the mediator. I will not tell anyone we are working things out. Raina nodded. That is a start. It is not a conclusion. I understand. She believed that he understood the words. Whether he could live inside them would have to be shown over time. When he stood to leave, he did not ask to touch her or require reassurance for having agreed. Raina remained seated until the door closed. Then she opened the notebook again and looked at the terms in her own handwriting. They did not guarantee love or a marriage or an easy new year. They gave her immediate life a shape she had chosen. For now, that was enough. 3 days after Christmas, the community space behind Lakeside Conservatory smelled of fresh paint and cedar dust. Workers had moved the exhibit panels aside to make room for the first pieces of the community studio, and through the wide windows Raina could see the lake holding a gray winter sky. She had come alone, carrying coffee in a paper cup and wearing boots that picked up a little white paint near the door. The quiet was different from the silence in the Calhoun library. It did not ask her to translate anyone else's feelings. It gave her room to notice her own. Darius arrived with a flat document folder under his arm. I brought the final program record, he said. The venue documents and grant confirmations are attached behind it. Maribel has already reviewed the file. Raina took the folder to a work table near the windows. The first page was not grand. It listed the date, the revised venue, the grant purpose, the event steward, the operations director, and the foundation team. Her name appeared beside the work she had actually done. Raina Calhoun, event steward. She read it twice, not because she distrusted the page, but because she wanted to feel the ordinary fact of it. Darius set down 2 pens. Sloan accepted a separate consulting project with the Neighborhood Arts Council, he said. She asked me to pass along a note, but only if you wanted it. Raina considered, then held out her hand. The note was brief. It acknowledged the boundary Raina had set, thanked her for not making a public performance of a private betrayal, and did not request absolution or further contact. Raina folded it once and placed it back in the folder. I am glad she has work. That belongs to her, she said. Darius nodded. Maribel also confirmed the grant obligations are complete. The mediator's office sent a date for your first meeting with Evan. Raina looked toward the far end of the room, where 2 volunteers were measuring the wall for shelves. The future appointment existed. It did not have to take over the morning. Good, she said. Put it on my calendar. Darius hesitated, then tapped the final record. Do you want me to send this to Evan for review before you sign? It was a sensible question. Evan was still a foundation principal, and the record was a shared professional document. Raina placed her fingers on the line above her name. She thought of the original run of show, her absence tucked quietly into an attachment. She thought of the conservatory at dusk, of Evan saying the earlier arrangement lacked her agreement, and of the new terms written in her notebook. None of those memories needed to become a speech. They had already changed what she could do. Send him the copy he is entitled to, she said. This one is mine to sign. Darius did not smile, as if she had delivered a victory line. He simply slid the pen nearer and stepped back from the table. Raina signed her name in clean, deliberate letters. The ink dried quickly. Outside, the lake reflected the unfinished studio windows in the pale afternoon light. Raina watched them for a moment, then closed the folder. The record was correct. The grant would continue. Sloane's note had asked for nothing, and Evan's meeting waited where it belonged. In the future, not at the center of her day. Raina picked up her coffee and walked to the window. Her reflection hovered faintly in the glass beside the lake, and the work in progress behind her. She did not need Evan to become a different man before she could recognize herself. She had her name on the record, her work in the world, and the right to decide the terms of every next step. This story is a fictional dramatization created for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people, companies, or events is purely coincidental.